Hello.
Hi. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good.
It's an amazing studio.
Thank you.
It's cool to think that like all of these skyscrapers might just be full of giant artist studios. Yeah, just people like just building crazy projects. So you have a show at Lokremise in St. Gallen called Sweet Days of Discipline. So Sweet Days of Discipline is the novella by Fleur Jaegi. It's also set at a school in the Swiss countryside. How did you make the connection between what you wanted to do with this show and with this particular book?
The truth is actually I read the book pretty late into the process of preparing the show. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was in my reading list since almost like 3-4 years, and I was catching up on this reading list, and then it caught me immediately. Like, first of all, it's very obvious, but it's set up exactly in St. Gallen, like in this very specific town, which is both, I think, iconic and very not so well known. Mm-hmm. And then it's happening in a school, and there was so much of my own feeling with childhood and teenagehood in this book. There's this whole idea that adulthood is a golden age. Like, we live in a society shaped by adults. And the way children are thought of, or even teenagers, are incomplete adults. But it's completely not the case. Like, children and teenagers are alien. They have a completely different way to think about the world. So I was interested in this idea that somehow this space, the space of learning, the space of childhood, is still considered as a sort of like completely separated state of life that is also out of politics, out of class, out of gender, out of race. This is the way we want to think about it, but it's absolutely not the case.
And the show is going to take the form of a kind of playground,
yes.
Right?
It's a playground, it's a domestic setting. It's more like, I would say, somehow, I think the show has a lot to do with the idea of borders. All space dedicated to children are space where there is very strong limits and very strong rules. For a reason. The museum is a bit like a school. It's a space that has the characteristic of the concept of Heterotopia. It's a space like the library or the hospital or the military. All those spaces have a little bit their own rules inside a global set of rules. And I was interested in making that connection between, the space dedicated for children and, the museum, which are also space under surveillance. So this is why the guards, for example, of the show are going to be participating in the show. Some of them are going to be singing lullabies.
Were you a well-behaved child at school?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I think I was kind of a bit similar to one of the characters of the novel. I was a very, very secretive, discreet child who hated school very deeply and who wouldn't respect rules so much, but always in a very, very quiet way. And I also missed school a lot because I was very often sick. And I wasn't really, there wasn't not a lot of surveillance at home. So school for me felt like almost like a extremely authoritarian, unbearable discipline. Because I didn't get used to structure early on.
Okay, let's talk about structure and rules a little. You have this ongoing series of paintings, the Do's and Don'ts series, that incorporates fragments of text from etiquette books. And you've described the museum, but also I think the exhibition, the installation you're going to be making in the museum as a Heterotopia, which is a space that has its own kind of set of rules and codes. So if your Sweet Days of Discipline is a space that operates with its own rules and regulations, what will those rules and regulations be?
It's difficult for me to actually set rules because I undo them the minute I do them. I think it's a little bit like almost like a manic thing that I'm fascinated by structure and rules, and then I build them, and then I undo them, and I build an exception right away. Do you think about rules when there is disorder, when there is messiness? And in a way, I guess the exhibition will be quite messy. And also, a lot of work has to do also with like a sense of failure and mistake, and how to use object, how to proceed with them. Looking at the way a toddler would try to force shape the wrong hole, I thought that, this is such a good illustration of the counterfactuals. 2 and 2 doesn't have to make 4. They also can be 22. You know, there's no reason to think about things with just one solution. There's always multiple solutions. And especially for sculpture, I think it's really interesting to, in a way, regress into a certain state where all these counterfactual possibilities are still there and experiment with them. Because so much of sculpture is also kind of like playing with shapes and experimenting and failing and putting your rage and your frustration into the material as well.
So this show has a theme of delegated care running through it, and that can include caregivers like nannies, dog walkers, but it also looks at time management, calendars, calculators, contracts, that sort of thing. And you have a theme of care that has been going back in your work. Can you speak about how you became interested in care and how you make sculpture that relates to the idea of care?
I guess that I've always been interested in how things begin, and the different stories of how things begin. I grew more and more interested in childhood, observing my own children, and trying to project into how do they see the world, what do they need. I thought that there was a lot of interesting things for me to chew on, especially thinking about the pre-verbal and the way at the very beginning, before there is words, concepts are understood through the mouth. And small children put everything in their mouth in order to understand, what they are. I also like to think about sculpture themselves a little bit as like substitute of the parent or the caregiver. Mm-hmm. There's, I think it's Freud who wrote the idea that the writer, in his writing, like the act of poetry, is a substitute for playing with the mother body. And I was thinking, look at the way people touch sculpture. I remember I went to this garden, flower garden in Miami, mm-hmm. and there was a small stone sculpture of a woman body, and it was written in really big, it was written do not touch. And then when you were getting close, the boobs and the belly was so shiny because it's been touched so much.
I still touch
sculpture.
Yeah, my girlfriend and I just went to the Noguchi Museum this weekend, where they say not to touch, but you have to touch.
Yeah.
It's so sense.
Yeah.
You have to wait for your moment and
exactly.
feel the stone.
Yeah. It's really, it's very, very tempting, and there is, I think, something of this very instinctive, like necessity to touch, to relate to something, but also to understand it. I mean, this is also why I like to work with bronze, because it's a material that doesn't get damaged by touch so much. Actually, I think it gets more beautiful, because when you touch bronze, it removes the patina, and then the bronze appears naked. It's really beautiful.
I think we should go look at some works. You mentioned having lots of legs in this show.
Yeah.
I think this is one of these like leggy works, right?
Yes, exactly.
Very long legs.
Yeah. When I think about it originally, when I draw it and when I make the models, I don't have a very precise concept or narrative in mind. And I think it's better because I like to discover it afterwards.
I think you've been interested in time for a while,
Yes.
right? Like your show at Palais de Tokyo, Days or Dogs.
Yes.
I think in 2017 that was arranged around like the 7 days of the week, right?
Yeah.
And there's an abacus right here.
It's actually the larger sculpture of the show, and actually you can move them.
So you can touch this.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because it's rubber and this is bronze. There's contrast of like very soft materials and very hard materials, which is also at play with some other sculpture.
I'd like to look at some dogs.
So the dogs, for me, it's kind of like two works made of like multiple elements. I mean, it's a very New York thing, actually, especially like
Yeah, there are dogs everywhere in Manhattan. Yeah, dog walkers everywhere.
Exactly, and I now
It's very
live,
New York.
Exactly, and now I live Upper West Side. Like I've heard that it's the zip code in the world where there's the most dog per habitant.
Yeah,
And I've noticed
I'd imagine it.
And it's actually true that I think there's more than 2 dogs per person there. And
Wow.
also, what's interesting is that there is dogs, very, very big dogs, and like very, very small dogs, and a lot of ugly dogs too. Like a lot of like dogs that are, you know, like not especially like pristine and beautiful, and some of them have a leg missing or an ear missing. And when they are, you know, waiting at the entrance of the building, and they are all sort of like attached to the same person or attached to the door. And I didn't know if the dog are guarding the building or are the dog being guarded. You know, there's sort of like ambivalence between who's guarding who and who's dependent on who as well, which is like a big dynamic of childcare, but also of, you know, relationship with pets in general. And
Do you have a dog yourself?
Not now, but I always had dogs before, and I'm missing having a dog. Maybe I wouldn't make dogs if I had dogs. So all the dogs are a little bit different. This one is also on.
Like a rocking horse, but a
Yeah,
greyhound.
it's a rocking greyhound.
Yeah.
So some of them are also don't exactly look like dogs. This one is also it's a little bit distorted. This is the model of it. I mean, it's not going to be the final title, but we call it between us with the studio. We call it the Calder dog because it's kind of like a Calder technique, which is like just like folded metal.
I like that as a title. The Dumbo Calder.
Yeah, some of them are made with steel wool. Which is a little bit of a new technique, and it's maybe the first time I'm doing that there is a little bit of a meditation on like soft and hard, and the steel wool is, I mean, it's steel, but it's wool, so it's kind of completely flexible, and it's kind of a cleaning tool. It's very unglorious etiquette, like image attached to it.
I see a lot of people pushing dogs around in their own little
also
carts
in
these
that
days.
stroller, as
their
well.
own, like dogs and strollers.
I mean, there's a lot of
See them every
stroller
day.
in the show. There is a lot of like rolling device, assistance of mobility device.
what is printed on this material? This reflective 3M metallic-looking fabric.
It's the topic of the show through like what those figures are, like dog sitter, nannies, babysitters. I combined a little bit all the different contracts I've had with the nannies I've worked with, and I also integrated a few like health care admin forms and some drawings and images of daily life. I guess that I was thinking that there's something about the admin work around, the idea of care that I've never seen or very rarely seen represented. Even though it's a labor of love, it also is a labor that fits into economy and like time management and contract and agreement. I'm not a journalist. I'm not the right person to kind of like talk about the healthcare and childcare crisis, but I guess it's this very indirect way to kind of like be reminded that care doesn't operate in a void. And even though it is performed with love, it is also operating within an economical system.
You mentioned, I think, that these contracts stress you out a lot.
Yeah.
Like these.
In general, contracts in general stress me out a lot. It's almost like when I read contract, I almost like read the opposite that I'm supposed to understand. It's a bit like the do's and don'ts. When you read the do's and don'ts, you immediately think about what you should not do. And if you think about it too much, it's happening. I guess it's also the ambivalence when things are very binary.
I think we chatted about etiquette and rules. It would be good just to see some of the actual
some of
sources.
some of the sources. At first, I had very disgust for those books because, the first feeling is always a bit rebellious. It's a bit like, oh, it's updated. What about if I do all the things they say you shouldn't do? For example, don't talk in a high, shrill voice and avoid nasal tones. Don't use slang, which is an elitist way to say, like, you need to speak like the upper class. Oh, my.
Oh, cracky.
I don't know this expression. Do you know it?
No.
But at the same time, exactly, there is some really interesting advice in it. There is an ambivalence with this etiquette book where they both carry something important and something that we as a society need. And at the same time, they also carry a lot of like prejudice. The fact that society starts to value something different has an influence on source code as well. So I was interested in especially also in the way in a world that is dictated by social, because we talk about social media, we just say social. It's just like social life is dominating all life in a way that is completely unprecedented. And it becomes an incredible burden right now. Like, how do people see me? What should I say? I almost don't post on Instagram anymore because I have too many followers. And I'm just paralyzed by what they're going to think about me. What if I made a misspelling mistake, or people realize I don't speak English so well? So I think that the social anxiety has become like a sort of, before it was a few people had social anxiety, now we all have social anxiety. And so we kind of all are striving for advice. And those books are delivering those advice, even though they feel the most obsolete thing. This one is interesting. It's kind of the modern version.
Yeah, I want this one.
and this one has been eaten by a dog, which is almost very meaningful.
Oh yeah, it's got teeth marks. Okay, cool. We've come full circle then.
Yes.
We have this here. We have the dogs down here.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Yes.